15 years of paperwork won't save you from progress, sweetheart. The voice cut through the midday air like a blade slicing through mountain wind, sharp, cold, dripping with the kind of contempt that only comes from someone who has never been told no. I did not look up immediately. My hands kept working the fence post, driving the nail into weathered wood with the same precision I had used for 2 decades in a very different line of work. The hammer struck true. The wood held. Some things, I had learned, only stay standing if you build them right the first time. When I finally raised my eyes, she was already standing in the middle of my meadow. A woman in her mid-50s, platinum blonde hair cut in a perfect bob that probably cost more than my truck payment. She wore a light blue suit that looked completely out of place against the backdrop of Colorado wildflowers and snow-capped peaks. A clipboard was tucked under her arm like a weapon. Sunglasses covered half her face, but they could not hide the smirk pulling at the corners of her mouth. Behind her, 3 black SUVs sat parked on my gravel drive. 2 men in expensive suits were walking my fence line with surveying equipment, measuring and marking, as if they owned the place. And beyond them, on the ridge that my grandfather used to ride every morning before sunrise, steel frames of new construction jutted up from the earth, like bones breaking through skin. I set down my hammer, wiped the dirt from my hands onto my jeans. The watch on my wrist, military issue from another lifetime, caught the sunlight. She noticed it. Her eyes lingered for just a moment before returning to my face. "You must be Coulter Braddock," she said, stepping closer. Her heels sank into the soft earth with each step, leaving marks on ground that 4 generations of my family had protected. "I've heard so much about you. The hermit on the hill. The man who refuses to join the 21st century." I said nothing, just watched. She tilted her head the way a predator does when sizing up prey it considers beneath its effort. Then she extended her hand, not for a handshake, but to offer me a white envelope. "Eviction notice," she announced, her voice sugar-coated poison. "You have 72 hours to vacate this property. The county has approved our expansion plan, and unfortunately for you, this little patch of nostalgia sits right in the middle of it." I took the envelope but did not open it. Instead, I looked past her at the men measuring my land. "Those your people?" "Summit Crest Estates surveyors," she confirmed. "We're updating the property lines to reflect the new zoning designations. I'm sure you understand." "I understand they're standing on private property without permission." Her smile tightened. "Mr. Braddock, I think you'll find that the boundaries have shifted somewhat since you last checked. Progress has a way of redrawing maps." She reached into her clipboard and produced a thick stack of papers, at least 47 pages by my count. "These are the violation notices your property has accumulated over the past 18 months. Failure to maintain landscaping standards, unauthorized structures, improper fencing materials, noise complaints from community residents." She flipped through the pages with theatrical precision. "The fines alone total over $12,000. I stared at the papers. "I've never been part of your HOA. The county expanded our jurisdiction last year. Your property now falls within Summit Crest oversight boundaries." Her eyes glittered behind those sunglasses. "Whether you signed up or not, you're subject to our standards. And Mr. Braddock, you have been in violation since day 1. Something flickered at the edge of my vision. A logo on the corner of her clipboard. Blue and silver, a mountain peak with a stylized S running through it. I had seen that design before, 15 years ago on different letterhead, in a different courtroom, attached to a company that was supposed to no longer exist. My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice level. And you are? She removed her sunglasses with a practiced flourish, revealing ice blue eyes that matched her suit perfectly. Sterling Ashworth, president of the Summit Crest Estates Homeowners Association. She paused, letting the name hang in the air. Welcome to the neighborhood, neighbor. The name hit me like a physical blow, but I did not show it. Ashworth, the same name that had appeared on forged deeds and fraudulent claims 15 years ago, the same name attached to the corporation that had tried to steal this very land from my family before I had dismantled their operation piece by piece. They told me that company was dead. They told me Warren Ashworth had disappeared, his empire collapsed, his schemes exposed. They told me it was over. Standing in front of me, wearing that predator smile, was proof that nothing was over. 72 hours, Sterling repeated, tucking her sunglasses into her breast pocket. I suggest you start packing. The bulldozers are scheduled for Monday. She turned and walked back toward her SUVs, heels punching holes in my grandfather's meadow with every step. I watched her go. In my back pocket, folded and worn from 15 years of waiting, sat a piece of paper, a federal court judgment, a document that said this land belonged to me and no one else, issued by the United States District Court and signed by a judge who did not answer to county commissioners or HOA presidents. Sterling Ashworth thought she was delivering an ultimatum. She had no idea she was lighting a fuse. The sun was setting by the time I finished walking my fence line. Every 30 feet, I found a new survey stake, orange plastic flags marking boundaries that did not match any legal document I had ever seen. Someone had moved my fence posts during the night. 50 feet of my property, gone with the stroke of a midnight shovel. My security cameras should have caught whoever did it. When I checked the equipment shed, I found the wires cut clean. Professional work. Not vandals, someone who knew what they were doing. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had not called in 3 years. Dossett Harding answered on the 4th ring. His voice was gravel and whiskey, the same as it had been when we worked cases together back in Wyoming. Coulter Braddock, he said. I was wondering when you'd come out of retirement. I need your help, Dossett. A long pause. The sound of ice clinking in a glass. Is this about the Ashworths? I should have known he would already know. Dossett made it his business to know things. Sterling Ashworth showed up on my property today with an eviction notice and 47 pages of HOA violations. She's claiming the county expanded her jurisdiction over my land. Another pause. Longer this time. Coulter, I can't help you. What? The Ashworths own half this county now. They've got commissioners in their pockets, judges at their dinner parties. Sterling's rebuilt everything her father lost, and she's done it smart this time. Legal. Or at least legal enough that nobody wants to look too closely. He sighed heavily. I'm sorry, old friend, but taking on Summit Crest would be professional suicide. You're telling me there's no one willing to fight them? I'm telling you that everyone who tried has regretted it. Lawyers disbarred, businesses shut down, reputations destroyed. His voice dropped. They don't just beat you in court, Coulter. They erase you. The line went dead. I stood alone in my kitchen, phone in hand, watching the last light fade over the mountains. Through the window, I could see the steel frames of Sterling's construction project, silhouetted against the orange sky like a cage being built around my home. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. He used to say that land does not care who claims it. Land only cares who fights for it. I had fought for this land once before. I had won. I would do it again. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of Colorado morning that reminds you the mountains do not negotiate with human schedules. I was at the county records office by 8 a.m., waiting on the steps when a young clerk unlocked the door. The building smelled like old paper and older secrets. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. I approached the counter and set down my folder. I need to see the original survey maps for parcels 7 through 12 in the Highland Ridge district, I said. Specifically, the 1987 cadastral survey. The clerk, a nervous young man with a county polo shirt and a forgettable face, typed something into his computer. His brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, sir. Those records are currently unavailable." Unavailable? They're being updated. The county surveyor's office initiated a review 3 months ago. The originals have been pulled from public access pending verification. I leaned forward. Those are public records. I have a legal right to view them. Sir, I understand, but the system shows them as restricted. He glanced over his shoulder, as if someone might be listening. Maybe you could come back in a few weeks, once the review is complete? I recognized the script he was reading from. Someone had told him what to say if anyone came asking about those specific parcels. Someone with enough authority to make a county employee nervous. Who authorized the review? He hesitated. I'm not really supposed to. The name, please. He clicked through several screens and his face went pale. The authorization came from the county assessor's office, signed by Thornton Ashworth. Another Ashworth, of course. I thanked the clerk and left. But I did not go home. Instead, I drove 40 miles east to a diner outside the county line. Neutral territory. The kind of place where a woman who valued her job might be willing to talk without worrying about who might see her. Linnea Crosswell was already seated in a back booth when I arrived. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with sharp eyes and the tired posture of someone carrying too many secrets. She worked as a surveyor for the county, one of the few professionals left who had not been bought or intimidated into silence. She did not offer her hand when I sat down, just slid a manila envelope across the table. I can't be seen with you, she said quietly. If they find out I'm talking to you, I'll lose more than my job. Then why are you here? She met my eyes. Because what they're doing isn't just illegal, it's systematic. And I'm tired of pretending I don't see it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on plain paper. Parcel 7B12. The original survey does not match the new one. What does this mean? It means someone altered the official boundary records for your property. The original survey from 1987 shows your land extending 120 acres further east than the current documents indicate. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. They've been doing this for years. Small changes. 5 acres here, 10 acres there. Nobody notices because nobody checks the originals. And the originals are now conveniently unavailable. She nodded. Pulled from public access 3 months ago, right around the time Summit Crest filed their expansion application. I studied the note in my hands. 120 acres. That was nearly a third of my total property. Land that had belonged to my family since my great-grandfather homesteaded it in 1903. There's something else, Linnea said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. A close-up of a signature on an official document. This is the authorization for the boundary revision. Look at the name. I looked. The signature read, to Warren Ashworth. Warren Ashworth has been dead for 12 years, I said. Exactly. Linnea's voice was barely a whisper now. Someone is forging dead men's signatures on county documents, and whoever it is has access to the assessor's office, the surveyor's records, and probably half the administrative offices in this county. She stood abruptly, gathering her things. I've told you everything I can. Please don't contact me again. It's not safe for either of us. Before I could respond, she was gone. The bell above the diner door chimed once, and I was alone with a photograph of a dead man's forged signature, and the growing certainty that Sterling Ashworth had been planning this for far longer than anyone knew. 2 days passed, then 3. Sterling's 72-hour deadline came and went, but no bulldozers appeared. Instead, something worse happened. I was replacing fence posts along my eastern boundary when the county sheriff's cruiser pulled up my drive. 2 deputies stepped out, hands resting on their belts in that casual way law enforcement uses when they want you to know they have authority. Coulter Braddock? That's me. The lead deputy, a thick-necked man with a name tag reading Ashworth, produced a folded document. You're under arrest for criminal trespassing and interference with lawful surveying operations. I stared at him. Trespassing? On my own land? According to county records, this parcel is designated as transitional development property under Summit Crest Estates jurisdiction. You've been observed multiple times interfering with authorized surveying crews and removing official boundary markers. Those markers were placed on my property without authorization. The land belongs to me. I have a federal court judgment confirming my ownership. Deputy Ashworth's expression did not change. That's for the courts to decide. Right now, I have a warrant, and you're coming with us. They let me make 1 phone call from the station. I did not waste it on a lawyer. Corwin, it's Coulter. Special Agent Corwin Slade had been my partner at the General Land Office before I retired. We had worked the Ashworth case together 15 years ago, building the evidence that should have ended their operation permanently. Now he was with the FBI's white-collar crime division in Denver. Coulter. His voice carried the weight of someone who had been expecting this call. I heard you were having trouble up in Summit County. They arrested me for trespassing on my own land. The sheriff's deputy who cuffed me is named Ashworth. A long exhale. Sterling's cousin. She's placed family members in key positions throughout the county over the past decade. Sheriff's Department, Assessor's Office, County Commission. It's a network. Can you help me? I've been watching Summit Crest for 2 years. Something's not right about their financing, their land acquisitions, the way properties keep changing hands just before the HOA expands into new areas. He paused. But I can't move without evidence. Solid, federal-level evidence. Then help me get it. What do you need? Access to the GLO database. I need the original case files from United States versus Ashworth Development Corporation, 2010, everything we compiled, everything that put Warren Ashworth out of business. Silence. Then Corwin's voice came back, harder now. You think this is connected to the old case? I think Sterling Ashworth has spent 15 years rebuilding exactly what we destroyed. And I think my land is the last piece she needs to finish whatever she started. I'll pull the files. But Coulter, be careful. If you're right about this, we're not just talking about a local HOA dispute. We're talking about federal crimes, wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy. The kind of case that takes years to build and makes very powerful people very angry. I've been angry for 15 years, I said. It's their turn. They held me for 18 hours before a judge ordered my release. The charges were not dropped, just suspended pending further investigation. A warning. A reminder that they could put me back in that cell anytime they wanted. I drove straight from the police station to the county library. It was a small building, underfunded and understaffed, but it had one thing the records office did not: public access to federal court archives. The librarian was an older woman with kind eyes and the careful manner of someone who had seen too many people come looking for answers they did not want to find. "I need to access federal case records," I told her. "United States versus Ashworth Development Corporation, filed in the District of Colorado, 2010. She led me to a computer terminal in the back corner of the building, away from windows and foot traffic. "These are public records," she said, as she helped me navigate the database. "Anyone can request them. But I should warn you, most of the detailed exhibits were sealed as part of the settlement. The case didn't settle. It went to judgment." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you certain? The summary I'm seeing indicates a confidential resolution." I leaned forward, scanning the screen. She was right. According to the federal database, the case had been resolved through sealed settlement negotiations. The judgment I had witnessed, the verdict I had helped secure, was nowhere in the official record. Someone had altered federal court documents. My hands began to shake, not from fear, but from the cold fury of realization. They had not just moved on after losing 15 years ago. They had reached back into history and tried to erase their defeat entirely. The librarian was watching me with growing concern. "Sir, are you all right? I need to make a copy of something." I pulled the folded paper from my back pocket. The original judgment, issued by Judge Catherine Winslow of the United States District Court. My copy, the one I had kept for 15 years because something told me I might need it. The librarian looked at the document, then at the screen showing no record of its existence, and understanding dawned in her eyes. "I think," she said slowly, "you should speak to someone with more authority than a county library." "I intend to." I made copies of everything: the judgment, the database discrepancy, the forged signature Linnea had given me. Then I drove home through gathering darkness, watching my mirrors for anyone who might be following. The construction on Sterling's Ridge had progressed since morning. More steel frames, more equipment, more of my grandfather's mountain being carved away to make room for something that would never belong there. I parked in front of my cabin and sat in the silence for a long moment, letting the weight of everything settle. 15 years ago, I had won this land in a courtroom. I had proven that Warren Ashworth and his corporation had forged documents, manipulated surveys, and stolen property from 17 families across 4 counties. The judge had ruled in my favor. The company had collapsed. Justice had been served, or so I thought. Now Warren's daughter stood where her father had fallen, armed with the same weapons, but wielding them more carefully. She had learned from his mistakes. She had buried the evidence of his defeat. She had spent 15 years building a fortress of forged papers and bought officials, and she had saved my land for last. Not because it was valuable, because it was personal. I was the one who had destroyed her father's empire, and now she was going to take everything I had in return. Except she had made one critical error. She thought I was just a farmer, a hermit on a hill, a relic of a past she had successfully erased. She did not know that I had spent 22 years as a federal investigator. She did not know that I had built cases against men far more dangerous than her father. She did not know that the skills I had used to expose Warren Ashworth's crimes were the same skills I could use to expose hers. Most importantly, she did not know that somewhere in the federal prison system, There might be people who remembered what really happened 15 years ago. People who had taken plea deals and served time because of evidence I had gathered. People who might be very interested to learn that someone was trying to resurrect the same schemes that had cost them their freedom. I walked into my cabin and opened the safe hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside were folders I had not touched in 15 years. Interview transcripts, financial records, photographs of forged documents and shell company registrations. Everything I needed to start building a case. Sterling Ashworth thought she had 72 hours to take my land. She had no idea she had just given me everything I needed to take her entire world. The next morning, I drove to a trailer park on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place where people ended up when life had taken everything else from them. Rusted mobile homes sat in crooked rows. Dogs barked at nothing. The smell of propane and desperation hung in the air. I was looking for a man named Birch McAllister. According to the old case files, he had worked as a maintenance supervisor for Ashworth Development Corporation back in the day. He had been a minor player, never charged with anything, but he had been present for things that the executives would have preferred to keep quiet. His trailer sat at the end of the row, distinguished from the others only by a small vegetable garden, struggling to survive in the rocky soil. When I knocked, it took a long time for anyone to answer. The man who opened the door was in his late 60s, weathered by years of hard living. His eyes carried the haunted look of someone who had seen things he could not forget. Birch McAllister? Depends on who's asking. My name is Coulter Braddock. I think we have some mutual acquaintances. His face changed. Fear flickered across his features, followed by something else. Recognition. You're the investigator, he said slowly. The one who brought down Warren. I am. He glanced past me, scanning the trailer park for anyone who might be watching. Then he stepped back and motioned me inside. The interior was small but clean. Photographs on the walls showed a younger Birch with a woman and 2 children, a family that had clearly moved on without him. I wondered when someone would come asking questions, he said, lowering himself into a worn armchair. I've been waiting 15 years. Tell me about Sterling. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sterling, Warren's perfect daughter. She was there for all of it, you know. The meetings where they planned which families to target, the discussions about which county officials could be bought. She wasn't just watching. She was learning. And after Warren disappeared, she picked up right where he left off. Smarter, though. More patient. She didn't try to grab everything at once like her old man. She built it piece by piece. Bought properties through shell companies so nobody could trace them back to her. Got her relatives into government positions. Created that HOA as a front for the whole operation. Birch leaned forward, his voice dropping. Your land, Braddock. That's the keystone. Sterling's been buying up everything around you for 15 years. She needs your property to connect all the parcels for some massive development deal. Without it, the whole project falls apart. How massive? $200 million, maybe more. She's got investors lined up from out of state. People who don't ask questions about where land comes from, as long as the returns are good. I absorbed this information, fitting it into the pattern I had begun to see. What about Warren? The official story is that he died 12 years ago. Birch's expression shifted. Something dark passed through his eyes. Warren Ashworth didn't die. He disappeared, took $40 million from the company accounts, and vanished right after you won that court case. Sterling filed a death certificate, claimed the estate, and used the inheritance to start rebuilding. He paused. But I've heard things. Whispers from people who still have connections. Warren might be alive, living somewhere offshore under a different name. If that's true, then Sterling committed fraud to claim his estate. That's just the beginning of what she's committed. Birch stood and walked to a small filing cabinet in the corner. He pulled out a worn folder and handed it to me. I kept copies, records of transactions, payments to county officials, names of shell companies. I was too scared to do anything with them, but maybe you're not. I took the folder. It was thick with documents. Why now? I asked. Why help me after all these years? Birch looked at the photographs on his wall, the family that had left him behind. Because I watched them destroy good people, families who had owned their land for generations. They lost everything because Warren Ashworth wanted to build shopping centers and golf courses. His voice cracked. My wife left me because I couldn't live with what I knew and was too coward to speak up. My kids won't return my calls. I've got nothing left to lose. He met my eyes. Make them pay, Braddock, for all of us. I spent the next 3 days in my cabin, organizing the evidence Birch had provided. The folder contained bank statements showing regular payments to county commissioners, shell company registrations that traced back to Summit Crest through a maze of holding corporations, emails discussing which landowners would be easiest to pressure into selling. Combined with what Linnea had given me and my own 15-year-old files, a picture was emerging. Sterling Ashworth had not just rebuilt her father's criminal enterprise, she had perfected it. But I still needed something more. A direct connection between Sterling's current operation and the original crimes. Proof that she had knowingly continued a pattern of fraud that had already been condemned by a federal court. That proof arrived in an unexpected form. I was reviewing old witness transcripts when my phone rang. A number I did not recognize. Mr. Braddock, this is Thornton Ashworth, County Assessor. I tensed. Another Ashworth. I understand you've been asking questions about property records in the Highland Ridge district, he continued. His voice was nervous, nothing like Sterling's ice-cold confidence. I think we should talk. Why would you want to talk to me? A long pause. Because I'm not like them. I took this job because I needed work, and Sterling is my cousin, but what they're asking me to do... He trailed off. I can't keep doing this. I have to live with myself. We arranged to meet the following evening at a location outside the county. When Thornton arrived, I understood immediately why he had broken. He was younger than I expected, early 30s, with the haunted look of a man trapped in something he could not escape. Sterling had me alter the survey records, he said, barely able to meet my eyes. She told me it was just a technicality, correcting old mistakes, but the changes she wanted didn't correct anything. They fabricated boundary lines that never existed. They showed properties belonging to Summit Crest that actually belonged to other people. People like me. You and others. Dozens of properties over the past decade. She's been doing this systematically, expanding her territory one forged document at a time. And the signature on the authorizations, Warren Ashworth. Thornton's face went pale. She made me use it. Said it was a formality. But Uncle Warren has been dead for 12 years. I didn't understand at first. But then I started looking closer at the estate documents, and nothing adds up. The death certificate, the probate records. It's all been manipulated. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. Everything is on there. Every altered record. Every forged authorization. Names, dates, amounts. If you can get this to the right people, maybe they can stop her before she finishes what her father started. Why are you doing this? She's your family. Thornton looked at me with eyes that held years of accumulated guilt. Because some things are more important than family, and because if I don't do something now, I'll never be able to look in a mirror again. He left without another word. I sat alone in my truck, holding a flash drive that contained enough evidence to bring down an empire. But I also knew that evidence alone would not be enough. Sterling had too many people in too many positions. If I tried to take this through local channels, it would disappear into the same black hole that had swallowed the original court records. I needed federal intervention. I needed people who operated beyond Sterling's reach. I needed to make a phone call I had been avoiding. Corwin, I have what you need. But we're going to need more than surveillance warrants. We're going to need a full federal investigation. On the other end of the line, Agent Slade was silent for a long moment. Tell me everything. I did. The forged signatures, the altered records, the network of family members embedded throughout the county government. The $200 million development deal was built on stolen land. The possibility that Warren Ashworth was still alive and Sterling had committed fraud to claim his estate. When I finished, Corwin let out a low whistle. If half of this is true, we're looking at federal charges across multiple jurisdictions: wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit property theft, potentially RICO violations if we can prove ongoing criminal enterprise. It's all true. I have documentation. Then we need to move carefully. Sterling Ashworth has had 15 years to build defenses. If she gets any warning that we're coming, evidence will disappear. Witnesses will suddenly have memory problems. You know how this works. I knew. I had seen it happen before. What's the play? I'll brief my supervisor tomorrow. If he approves, we can start building a formal case. But Coulter, this will take time. Weeks, maybe months, to do it right. I may not have weeks. Sterling's pushing hard on the eviction. She's got a community meeting scheduled next week to vote on some kind of mandatory annexation of my property. Then stall her. Give us time to build the case. And whatever you do, don't let her know what you have. If she realizes the walls are closing in, she'll burn everything and disappear, just like her father did. I ended the call and stared at the flash drive in my hand, a digital time bomb waiting to explode. Sterling Ashworth thought she was days away from completing her 15-year plan. She thought she had eliminated every obstacle, bought every official, erased every record of her family's crimes. She had no idea that the man she was trying to destroy had spent his entire career doing exactly what she feared most: building cases, gathering evidence, and waiting for the perfect moment to bring empires crashing down. The morning of the community meeting dawned cold and bright. I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun climb over the mountains. The construction on Sterling's Ridge had paused. Equipment sat idle. Workers milled about with nothing to do. Something had changed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meeting postponed. Sterling called emergency session. She knows something is wrong. Linnea. Despite the risks, she was still watching. Still feeding me information. I drove into town and parked where I could observe the Summit Crest Administrative Building. Sterling's black SUV was already there, along with several vehicles I did not recognize. County plates, state plates. Someone had called in reinforcements. Through the glass windows, I could see figures moving in agitation, arms waving, voices raised, though I could not hear the words. Then Sterling emerged. Her light blue suit was wrinkled, her perfect hair slightly disheveled. For the first time since I had met her, she looked rattled. She saw me watching from across the street. Our eyes met. In that moment, I knew that she knew. Not everything, but enough. Enough to understand that her carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. She climbed into her SUV and drove away without looking back. The game had changed. The hunter was becoming the hunted. And somewhere in Denver, federal agents were beginning to build a case that would burn Sterling Ashworth's empire to the ground. 3 days of silence followed. No surveyors on my property. No violation notices in my mailbox. No black SUVs crawling up my drive. Sterling had retreated behind her walls, regrouping, calculating her next move. But I was not idle. Corwin called on the 4th morning with news that changed everything. We found Warren Ashworth. I set down my coffee cup. Where? Panama. Living under an assumed name in a gated community outside Panama City. He's been there for 11 years, living off money that was supposed to be seized after the original case. Corwin's voice carried a grim satisfaction. Sterling filed a death certificate in Colorado, while her father was sitting on a beach drinking cocktails. That's federal fraud on top of everything else. Can you extradite him? We're working on it. But here's the interesting part. Warren's been in contact with Sterling the entire time. Wire transfers, encrypted communications, even a few visits that she tried to hide. They've been running this operation together from the beginning. She was never rebuilding his empire. She was continuing it with his guidance. The pieces clicked into place. 15 years of patience. 15 years of careful planning. Father and daughter working in tandem, one from the shadows and one in plain sight. What do you need from me? We're ready to move, but we need to catch Sterling in the act. Something that ties her directly to the ongoing fraud, not just documents that could have been planted or altered. We need her on record admitting to the scheme. The community meeting, I said. She rescheduled it for this Friday. She's planning to push through the annexation vote while she still has control of the board. That's our window. If you can get her talking at that meeting, get her to reference the land acquisitions or the boundary changes, we can use it. And if she doesn't talk? Then we move anyway. We have enough for indictments, but a confession would seal the case permanently. I agreed to the plan. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for the moment when 15 years of waiting would finally end. The Summit Crest Community Center was packed when I arrived. 200 residents filled the folding chairs, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. Sterling stood at the front of the room, flanked by her board members, her light blue suit freshly pressed, and her composure fully restored. Whatever doubts had rattled her earlier in the week had been buried beneath that mask of cold authority. She saw me enter, and her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Just watched as I took a seat in the back row. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying across the room with practiced ease, "thank you for coming on such short notice. As you know, our community has been growing rapidly, and with growth comes the need for decisive action." She clicked a remote, and a map appeared on the screen behind her. My property was highlighted in red, surrounded by the blue territory of Summit Crest. This parcel has been an obstacle to our expansion plans for too long. The owner has refused reasonable offers to purchase. He has ignored community standards. He has obstructed our surveyors and threatened our contractors. She paused for effect. "Tonight, we vote to exercise our legal right to mandatory annexation under the county's Transitional Development Statute." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I remained silent, watching. Once annexed, Sterling continued. This property will be subject to Summit Crest oversight. The current structures will be evaluated for compliance. The land will be integrated into our master development plan, which includes a world-class golf course and luxury residential units that will increase all of your property values by an estimated 40%. She smiled, the predator's smile I had come to know so well. Are there any questions before we proceed to the vote? I stood. I have a question, Ms. Ashworth. The room went quiet. Sterling's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. Mr. Braddock, I'm surprised you decided to attend. I'm surprised you decided to move forward with this vote, considering the federal investigation into your land acquisition practices. The murmurs became gasps. Sterling's face tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Then let me refresh your memory. I walked forward, pulling documents from my jacket as I moved. These are copies of altered survey records from the county assessor's office. Records that show property boundaries being changed without legal authorization. Records signed by Warren Ashworth, a man who has been legally declared dead for 12 years. I held up the forged signature for the room to see. Except Warren Ashworth isn't dead. He's living in Panama under an assumed name, communicating with his daughter through encrypted channels, directing this entire operation from offshore. Sterling's composure cracked. That's a lie. My father died 12 years ago. I have the death certificate. You have a forged death certificate that you filed to fraudulently claim his estate. An estate that included $40 million in stolen funds and property rights that were never legally his to begin with. The room erupted. Residents turned to each other, voices rising in confusion and anger. Sterling's board members began backing away from her, their expressions shifting from loyalty to fear. This is nonsense, Sterling shouted, trying to regain control. This man is a disgruntled landowner, making wild accusations to avoid legitimate legal proceedings. Then explain this. I held up the flash drive Thornton had given me. This contains records of every altered document, every forged signature, every payment made to county officials to look the other way while you stole land from families across 4 counties. Your own cousin provided it. He couldn't live with what you asked him to do. Sterling's face went white. She looked toward the door, calculating escape routes. That was when the doors opened. Agent Corwin Slade walked in first, FBI credentials visible on his belt. Behind him came 2 additional agents, followed by Dossett Harding and 12 people I had never met but immediately recognized. The families, the victims, the people Sterling and her father had spent decades destroying. Sterling Ashworth, Corwin announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. You are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit property theft, and fraudulent filing of death certificates. You have the right to remain silent. Sterling did not remain silent. She screamed. This land was supposed to be ours. My father built an empire, and this nobody destroyed it 15 years ago. I spent every day since then rebuilding what he lost, and I will not let you take it again. Her voice cracked with rage, years of suppressed fury finally breaking through the polished surface. I stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear me. Your father built a fraud, I said quietly. I made sure it couldn't stand then, and I'm making sure it can't stand now. The agents moved forward. Handcuffs clicked around Sterling's wrists. Her light blue suit, so carefully maintained as a symbol of her authority, wrinkled as they led her toward the door. The charges were read aloud for everyone to hear. Wire fraud across state lines. Bank fraud involving federally insured institutions. Conspiracy to commit systematic property theft. Fraudulent filing of federal documents. The potential sentence, 27 years in federal prison. Total value of the fraud, $87 million. Number of properties illegally obtained, 23. Number of families who would finally receive justice, too many to count. The federal courthouse smelled like old wood and fresh anxiety when Sterling Ashworth stood before Judge Catherine Winslow 6 months later. The same judge who had ruled against her father 15 years earlier. The same judge whose verdict Sterling had tried to erase from the public record. Sterling wore prison orange instead of light blue. Her platinum hair had lost its perfect styling. The imperial confidence that had defined her for so long had crumbled into something smaller, diminished, like a costume that no longer fit. Guilty on 14 counts. The verdict came down like a hammer falling on everything the Ashworth family had built over 4 decades of deception. Warren Ashworth was extradited from Panama 3 months later. He faced his own charges, his own trial, his own reckoning. The empire he had started and his daughter had continued was finally, permanently destroyed. Summit Crest Estates was placed under federal receivership. The HOA was dissolved and restructured with new leadership. Linnea Crosswell, the surveyor who had risked everything to expose the truth, was appointed to oversee the transition. Birch McAllister, who had lost his trailer in the fire Sterling's people had set, moved into the old cabin on my property. He tended the vegetable garden and helped with the horses and slowly began to rebuild a life he thought was gone forever. Thornton Ashworth testified against his cousin in exchange for immunity. He left Colorado afterward, seeking a fresh start somewhere his family name did not carry the weight of 4 generations of fraud. The 12 families who had lost their land received full restitution. 23 properties were returned to their rightful owners. A community that had lived under the shadow of corruption for decades finally stepped into the light. I stood on my porch the evening after the final verdict, watching the sun set over mountains that my great-grandfather had first seen more than a century ago. The construction equipment on Sterling's Ridge had been removed. The steel frames had been torn down. The meadow was beginning to heal, wildflowers already pushing up through the scarred earth. 15 years ago, they told me I would never see this place again. They told me the Ashworths were too powerful, too connected, too deeply embedded in the systems that were supposed to protect ordinary people. I waited, not because I am patient, but because I understood something they never did. Truth does not expire. It does not fade with time or disappear when powerful people try to bury it. Truth simply waits, gathering strength in the darkness, until the moment comes when it can no longer be contained. Some people build empires on stolen ground. They construct towers of forged documents and purchased officials, believing that height equals permanence. But empires built on lies have foundations made of sand. All it takes is one storm to wash them away. The horses grazed peacefully in the meadow below, unaware of the battles that had been fought over the ground beneath their hooves. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack, the sound carrying across land that had weathered a century of storms and emerged stronger each time. Sterling Ashworth learned that lesson too late. I had known it all along. Some victories are not measured in courtroom verdicts or prison sentences. Some victories are measured in the quiet moments afterward, when you realize that everything they tried to take from you is still exactly where it belongs. Home. If Coulter's battle for justice inspired you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us bring more stories like this to light. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for staying to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe to IS Stories.